Gentlemen, hold your thoughts for one more second, because we do want to hear the man of the hour, Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking this past hour. Let's take a listen.
Today, it became clear that Gantz and Lapid searched for any possible way to blow up the talks. 3 months ago, they said, if only there will be a halt in legislation, we will talk. We stopped the legislation, but they didn't engage in real discussions. They rejected any proposal our representatives offered at the president's residence. And today, they did a new thing, saying, if our candidate is not selected to the committee, we will blow up the talks. But their representative was elected, and they blew up the talks. Gantz and Lapid do not want a real negotiation.
Okay, gentlemen, let's begin with the macro and then dive into the technicalities, or the details, if you will. What is next for the judicial overhaul? Mr. Yehudah Glick, your 30 seconds are on. We always begin with our quickfire round. You all know the drill here. Please, go ahead.
Shalom, Eli, and shalom to those who are watching us tonight. I think maybe ruin the feeling here. I think you're dramatizing what happened today. In politics, sometimes you win one, sometimes you lose one. But making drama from every little thing that happens is a little overdoing it. I think the coalition will continue. It'll go in its way. I'm not sure that Netanyahu didn't know that this is what would be the results. For him, it was definitely the best result that he could have only expected. And I think his government is strong and stable as ever.
Yeah, well, if you take drama out of politics and media, you're left with nothing, right? Mark Regev, your thoughts, please.
So we have to divide your question, Ellie, into two. What do I think will happen and what do I want to happen? I'd like to see the opposition agree to return to the talks in the president's house, and there'll be a compromise solution. That's what most Israelis want. One poll had close to 60% of Israelis want reform through compromise. What will happen? I think ultimately the government's going to be forced to do reforms on their own unilaterally, because it doesn't look like the opposition wants a deal. And they should do that very, very carefully, very cautiously, and very conservatively, in a way that is not going to rock the boat too much.
Uri Zaki, your take?
First of all, I love it how Yehudah and the other disciples of Netanyahu, when he's beaten, when the opposition is on the numbers 56 and the coalition is 64, and they lose 1-0 to the opposition wins, he says it's Netanyahu's doing. It's not Netanyahu's doing. Netanyahu lost grasp of his coalition. He's torn between what he knows needs to do, and that's to shelve or cancel or actually declare the end of this so-called reform, which is an overhaul, and his coalition that pushes him, and his own party pushes him to another direction.
Okay, gentlemen, let's feel free to interact from this point onwards and engage in a conversation. So let's circle back to the bottom line of today. The coalition essentially just buying time. What will it be able to achieve until next month? What will happen, Ambassador Regev?
So I don't know. No one knows what's going to happen. But I would hope that there can be a quick return to the talks in the president's house. I think that's good for the country. I think it's good for everybody. If we can have a compromise solution, it's still the best alternative. And its probability might have gone down, but we shouldn't give up on the talks. The president, I'm sure, behind the scenes is going to be working to try to get people to come back to these talks. It's a pity that the opposition has decided to pull out. They offer the best path forward. That's the ultimate truth. What's the alternative? The alternative is the government to do things unilaterally, which is a second best. It's not a good thing.
Yeah, but let's stay on the coalition side before we take a look at what's happening on the opposition. At least 4 coalition members, according to the count, it also was very long and troubled, voted with the opposition today. Netanyahu seems to be losing control over his party, over his coalition. Yehudah Glick, what is more politically dangerous for Netanyahu at this point in time, his opposition enemies or his coalition friends?
I think that Netanyahu has a very strong coalition and a very strong government. Let's just put things very, very clearly.
Please.
Right now, it's quite obvious that Netanyahu, as a very responsible leader of the country, wants to cooperate with the opposition. At the same time, he has pressure inside his coalition, and he wants to promote the agenda that he was elected for, and he's trying to, justly, the people from his coalition are demanding that, but at the same time, he wants to do it responsibly. So therefore, he is doing every effort to hold on with the dialogue with the opposition. Unfortunately, the opposition, from the very beginning, are becoming drunk. They became drunk from their success of the demonstrations. They become drunk of their protests all over the world. And today they became drunk because they had some kind of a victory on the political level, and they're losing their head. Netanyahu is very stable in what he's doing. He wants to promote the justical reform in the judicial system here in Israel that everybody almost unanimously agrees that it's needed. And he wants to do it in a responsible way. And therefore, I could totally agree with what Mark said. The right thing to be done is to go back to the president and to continue the dialogue. I don't trust the opposition because they're losing control. They're sure that they deserve everything. And I'm afraid they're going to behave without responsibility.
Well, this laughter, Uri Zaki, might be proving Yehudah Glick right. Are you a bit tipsy?
No, I'm not tipsy at all. I'm just enjoying the stand-up. I love Yehudah, really. But it's actual stand-up.
Question being, maybe Netanyahu should get some sort of, I wouldn't say all-out support, but if he is trying, or at least seems to be...
He's not trying anything.
Okay, please,
He's not trying anything, with all due respect. And what Ambassador Regev said also, I think, is I don't know, unrelated to reality. Let's put it this way. Listen, Netanyahu is now totally dependent on the talks in the president's
residence
house residence, because he put himself in a situation. He indeed received the largest majority in the last few years any prime minister got, or even he himself, with his coalition. And he just, with this crazy overhaul that he now knows jeopardizes not only, one or two votes in the Knesset, but his whole legacy, his whole standing. The economy is collapsing. We see the Israeli stock market going down, while the stock markets in the West, in the United States, in Europe, are going up. We see the shekel losing grounds vis-a-vis the dollar and the euro. We see investments going out of Israel. He wants to deal with peace with Saudi Arabia. He wants to deal with Iran. He wants to deal with the economy. And he finds himself in this trap that both he and Levin worked on together. Now he wants to stop it. He can't stop it because he's a hostage of his own coalition, his own party, elements in his own party. So he's totally dependent on these talks. You can't blame the opposition. Why is the opposition relevant? If they want to, in the good, the bad, and the ugly, they said, if you want to shoot, don't talk.
No,
so why are they passing this legislation? Who told them to start this altogether? Why did he start this whole overhaul? He can do whatever he wants. He has a 64, but does he? Does he have 64? I'm not sure.
Uri, now it's my turn to laugh. Really, you guys, from day one, the opposition in Israel wasn't willing to legitimize the results of the elections. November 1st elections, 64.
Really, Yehudah, you're talking to me about legitimization of results of election?
But
you remember what Netanyahu himself did only a few months ago? What are you talking about? It's not the role of the opposition to legitimize the coalition.
No,
the coalition needs to rule, but it can't because it went crazy.
The government was elected and has the legitimacy to promote its policy. And that's what it's been trying to do.
Who's stopping you?
Unfortunately, I'll tell you who's stopping us. People who are irresponsible, who are running violent...
Who are defending Israel's democracy, who are protesting in a democratic way? Who's stopping you? Why Netanyahu swears every day that the reform will go on? Why doesn't he go on with it?
I'll tell you, Uri, those who are stopping us are the protesters who are doing irresponsibly, going around
That's
the
democracy.
world,
We still have a
convincing the
democracy.
world
We're not
to fight
Hungary
against
yet.
our
We're not
country.
Russia yet, like you guys want us to be.
No.
We're not. The people here went to protest.
No,
That's
we
part
want
of
you to
democracy.
behave
Tough.
Not like gangsters. We want the
Like
protesters
gangsters?
not to behave like
Going
gangsters.
out in their tens of thousands
Yes, like
every
gangsters.
week for the last 23 weeks?
Yes.
That's gangsters?
Uri.
Only someone who
Uri.
believes in dictatorship talks like that.
And on that note, gentlemen, we will all take a deep breath. And the always diplomatic Mark Regev will be jumping in right after the break as we continue our discussion. Obviously, so much more to unpack, not just what happened today, but what will happen from this point onward. So don't go anywhere. A few minutes and we're back. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back to the summit. Thanks for staying with us. Still with us here, of course, Ambassador Mark Regev, Mr. Uri Zaki, Mr. Yehudah Glick. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. We're also staying on topic. But before we get back to our conversation, let's take a listen to opposition leaders, plural, Yair Lapid, Benny Gantz, and their announcement to freeze, not to throw it all away, to halt the talks at the president's residence. Let's take a listen.
Netanyahu prevented the establishment of the committee today and put an end to the pretense that he was open to negotiations. Netanyahu was once a strong cheater. Now he's a weak cheater. The committee was not established. The threat to democracy was not removed. Netanyahu knew exactly the consequences. Without a committee to select judges, we will not go to the president's residence. No committee, no talks.
What happened here today is that the Prime Minister decided to go against the state. In 5 words, Benjamin Netanyahu against the state of Israel. I am disturbed because Netanyahu has collapsed. Netanyahu surrendered to the extremists. He surrendered to the barn burners who want to dismantle Israeli society. His behavior raises a big question over his judgment in fateful issues.
So let's get to it, gentlemen. Another quick fire round, 30 seconds each. Our original question was, should negotiations at the president's residence continue? But allow me to paraphrase. Is there an alternative to the negotiation framework? Ambassador Regev, please take the lead.
Yes, there is, and that is that the government goes ahead unilaterally after, unfortunately, failing to find agreements with the opposition. And they move ahead, though, very carefully. And if I had to make a suggestion to them, I'd say, why don't you propose the bills that in the past were proposed by Lieberman, by Gideon Saar, by today members of the opposition who supported judicial reform, use exactly the same bills as them, have them vote against their own proposed legislation.
Yehudah Glick, your thoughts?
There's no justification for the decision of Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz to hold on the negotiations. The reform must continue. Best, it should continue through dialogue. If not, it should continue just on a one-side basis because it has to continue. There is no reason in the world for them to hold only for the fact that they had one victory and they think that they deserve it all. That's the situation. It has to continue.
Uri Zaki.
The halting of the talks were not because of the election of Ms. MK El Harar, but rather because of Netanyahu's stunt trying to, once again, breaking the deal that was agreed with the opposition. It's very hard to trust Netanyahu, and he once again proved he can't be trusted. Perhaps there'll be a return at one point to the talks. It's best, but we should know that the talks serve Netanyahu more than anyone else because the talks are his way. He doesn't want this reform anymore. He doesn't want this overhaul. The toll is too high for him, and that's why he uses the talks. The opposition doesn't have to play in his game, especially when he's doing those stunts in order to refrain from, committing to what was decided.
But Mr. Zaki, I do want to ask you before we jump back to Ambassador Regev, was the opposition honest in its intention today, or more accurately, was it in their political interest that today will not go smoothly?
Listen, they were criticized before we knew the results. They were criticized by some of the leaders of the protest itself by being weak, by why they didn't put 2 members of the opposition as candidates to the committee. The fact that they all aligned behind El Harar and left a spot for the coalition proves that they came with a clean heart to the situation. The one who breached the agreement was Netanyahu with his games, and it can't go without any toll with the talks, and Netanyahu will have to prove once again. Will be very hard for him that he comes with a clean heart to these talks.
Yeah, Ambassador Regev, many years at the Netanyahu beehive, if you will. Do you get the impression that he's some sort trapped within his own coalition, as Uri Zaki suggested earlier?
I agree with Uri that I think Netanyahu probably looks back on the last couple of months and says this was all handled terribly. It doesn't mean he doesn't want to have judicial reform, but he knows that the way it was done up until now was not successful. It just created a backlash and stopped him from moving forward. And so his challenge, I think, is to find a way to make this work effectively, but without rocking the boat too much. And as Uri said, he wants to concentrate on peace with Saudi Arabia and other issues. The Iran nuclear deal, he's got bigger fish to fry. The secret politics is doing what is possible and making priorities and not shooting in all directions at once. And I think that's what Netanyahu wants to do today. I think one of these problems is that the opposition seems to be led by the protesters in the street. And the problem, I think, is the protesters in the street, and there's a small group out now demonstrating they're so thankful.
Mark, the opposition doesn't work for Netanyahu. What about the coalition? That's his real problem, not the opposition.
Have fallen down, and I think that is a problem because these people don't want to compromise. I think that's really not about judicial reform. They want chaos. They want to bring the government down, and that's very dangerous. I think on the substance of the issues. On the substance of the issues, you can find compromises. You can find compromises that both sides can live with. Unfortunately, if the opposition in the Knesset is being dictated by extremists in the street, it's not going to work.
Uri, is the protesters' end goal, the same end goal of their political representatives, the opposition?
I'm really astonished by what Ambassador Regev is saying. What his criticism towards the opposition is that they want to topple the government. That's the role of the opposition. Against their interest, they went into.
It's not about judicial reform then.
No, they went into the talks against their interest in the sense for the better for the good of the state of Israel, not their own political interest. Their own political interest is let Netanyahu kill his own coalition because that's the track he put himself in. So to tell the opposition, the irresponsible. The people who are irresponsible
it's not about judicial reform.
That's the coalition. And Ambassador Regev, you are ignoring the coalition. You have there Mr. Smotrich, Mr. Ben-Gvir, you have Yariv Levin himself. All these people don't let Netanyahu pull back from the overhaul, and that's the real problem there. The structure of his own coalition, the fact that he doesn't even control his own Likud party anymore, not only the coalition. That's very different than Netanyahu we used to know. His biggest asset was the fact that he was controlling not only his own party but his own bloc. That went away. This is a different Netanyahu, weak Netanyahu that doesn't control the agenda. I don't see how he's going to fix it.
Television tonight, who said that Netanyahu might have wanted the result that came today in the Knesset. In other words, I think to say that this was some huge loss to Netanyahu when leading commentators are saying that he might have wanted this result, I think you should be a little more modest.
No, I think that's ridiculous. Even if he wanted this result, that means that he can't control his own party. Because if he would have wanted this result, he would have said, Mr. Levin, we need now one member of the opposition, one member of the coalition. He would put it up front, not hiding behind four people
Yehudah Glick, we're running out of time. Let's take a listen to Yehudah Glick, please. Yeah.
Okay. Before I start, I just want to say one thing. We spoke about Netanyahu and Gantz and Lapid. I first want to wish Karine El-Arar, my good friend, success in her job, and she should behave responsible and should lead a dialogue in the committee. And from here, I want to remind Uri. I want to remind Uri that Netanyahu did not have to go to the dialogue at the president's office. He had
Yes,
a
he did.
majority. He could have passed the legislation.
That
he
saved
did it
him.
because of responsibility. He wanted to preserve the state and the people.
He wanted
and
to
that was
stay
the
in
reason he did
power.
it.
He wanted
And
to stay
every
in
single
office.
day today, he can get up and stop it. He can stop it. And the,
Why-
and the,
so
the
he
opposition.
should. Why
goal
isn't he
is not
stopping
to
it?
topple the government. The opposition goal is to criticize, but the government here is stable, and the way to do it is through dialogue. You want to do it through dialogue, you're welcome to do it. If not,
Yehudah,
Netanyahu
he was
has
stopped
full
because he tried to
legitimacy
sack
promote
the Minister
his
of
policy that
Defense,
he was elected
and
for.
that's the real truth, not because of any forthcoming,
Okay.
or he tried to pass this
Gentlemen,
overhaul, and he was stopped by a
what-
democratic protest, and now he's totally
what is
dependent on these
certain that
talks.
as long as the coalition continues to talk about the opposition and the coalition and not looking inwards, we're probably going to speak to you again, which is good news.